Elevated fire danger for parts of the upcoming week, plus warming ahead. I'm unpacking it all. ABC 10 Chief Meteorologist Monica Woods. All right, let's get right to it here. Red flag warning in effect for parts of this Sierra. This is going to be through Alpine and Mono counties and then just east of the crest as well. That's just through Monday night. As we turn our attention to the middle of the week, it's going to be a slightly different weather danger that we're dealing with in terms of our elevated fire weather. Preventing a spark, though, really important this time of year. Keep vehicles off of dry grass. Watch for dragging vehicle parts, especially in a time of year where we're boating and camping and hiking. Mowing lawns, not dry grass or weeds, and then properly dispose of cigarettes and matches. Don't want to have those off the side of the road because of all the dry brush right now. Fire weather alerts. When we go into that red flag warning, that will be the elevated risk from a fire weather watch. And what that means is that that's issued when fire weather conditions are imminent or occurring. Now, the other condition that we'll be looking out towards, especially digging deeper into the season, will be a particularly dangerous situation red flag warning. As the fuels continue to dry and if the weather elements do look conducive for fast and explosive fire growth, that's when we'll see that particularly dangerous situation red flag warning. We're going to keep these extended weather forecasts going, obviously, anytime there are extreme weather conditions, but also on a weekly basis. We've got a weather explainers and weather and climate specials on ABC 10 Plus. That's live, local, always on. Make sure you download it wherever you stream for free on TV. Taking a look at some of the conditions that are contributing to the fire risk right now in this Sierra. Really looking at those winds amplified through the higher elevations and then east of the crest as well. That will continue until tonight. And then as we go into our Tuesday forecast, we actually start to see some lighter winds. But on the flip side of that, we don't get the cooling effects from those onshore winds, and the heat will start to build into the forecast. For our Monday, we're starting off with that low pressure system to the north of us, contributing to that nice onshore flow for the valley, and temperature slightly below average, but the breezy conditions elevating the fire danger just south of Highway 50 as we head into the Sierra. Now, middle of the week, we get into that peak warmth, and that will bring in some higher fire danger for the northern and central part of the Sacramento Valley. As we dig in deeper to the end of the work week, though, breezy conditions redeveloping as another low starts to approach, and conditions will start to moderate somewhat. Our heat risk forecast for the middle of the week, we're going to be in the moderate range, so some people will be impacted, especially those that are sensitive to heat or don't have adequate access to cooling. But it's very short-lived because we're right back to the cooling conditions once again, and very much what we've been seeing through the month of June. We've seen very little big heat throughout the course of June. We've been largely right about or slightly below average for much of the month. We started off the month with above average conditions, and then we really brought down those highs. Much of that we experienced through last week, with 5 days below average last week, and we're going to see more of that this week as well. This is the time of year we usually start to prepare ourselves for those big warmth days with highs in the 100s. We really have yet to see that through the month, and we won't see much of that even when we reach that peak heat on Wednesday. Our highs will be roughly about 10 degrees above average, but still within a range of what we typically see. That being said, always good to bring in those reminders for our cooling savings. Only use fans when in your room. They cool people, not rooms. Set your air conditioning to 78 degrees. That'll bring down those power bills. Also, close drapes and blinds during the middle of the day. It's nice to open up the windows and the blinds when we're in the cooling conditions of the overnight hours into early in the morning. But once that sun starts baking those houses, you might want to close the drapes and blinds. And don't use big appliances during the evening when those peak rates are in effect. We won't see much in the way of cloud cover coming in for much of the week. In fact, we start to see more and more access to sunshine, especially through the Central Valley. And so we'll see that UV index going up as well. It will peak on Wednesday. As you can see, we're already in that very high range here Monday and Tuesday, but then we get into the extreme range. So definitely want to keep inside during 10 to 2 p.m. Use SPF 30 or above, making sure that you're properly protected from those dangerous rays. Our river temperatures are also sitting quite cold this time of year, so it's always a good time to remind ourselves that when we're near the water, always use a life vest, keep a close eye on children. So many kids are out of school, and I know we're looking for things to do with them, but you want to make sure that they are properly protected. Avoid alcohol if you're over by many of the beautiful waterways. Cold water impacts will be affecting our breathing and muscle control with water that's that cold. Strong currents also make for tough rescues. We see it time and time again. Rescuers are really struggling to get folks out of the water. Headlines include tonight that light breeze comes to an end, and that results in warmer conditions as well as that high UV index. Fire danger will also be a bit elevated during the middle of the week, mostly confined to the lower elevations. We get into that warming under this ridge of high pressure. To the north of us, we've got another developing low, and so that's going to bring quick relief from just a bump up in temperatures midweek. And then we're right back to the cooling conditions of that low moving in. In fact, we are looking at a slight chance of showers as we welcome in summer in extreme northern California and parts of the Pacific Northwest. Summer solstice is June 20th. At that point, the center of the sun's rays are directly above the Tropic of Cancer. So we get more daylight. Northern hemisphere gets more daylight, less daylight for the southern hemisphere. So again, we're going to look at more and more access to the daylight with our sunset and sunrise changing by June 20th. That's when we're going to see pretty much the peak daylight of the year, because you can see by the autumnal equinox, our sunrise is going to be later at 6:54. That is true as well for the sunset. We get a very late sunset on June 20th, whereas for the autumnal equinox, it is a bit earlier by about an hour and a half or so. So you can see the access to daylight is really optimal this time of year. All of that being said, again, we are looking at that cooler scenario as we kick off almost the first full week of summer. Also likely wetter through the Pacific Northwest. So we're kind of off to a very mild start here for the summer season. I don't know if you were like me. I'm just hoping that it doesn't catch up with us a little bit deeper into this season, because all things considered, climatology is still favoring a much warmer than average summer. So might get the back end of that coming a little bit later on into July and August. Highs, though, for right now, quite mild, right around 80 for the Tahoe Basin, 80s and 90s for the foothills. No 100 seen throughout much of this regional forecast. 60s along the coast. We're hitting 80s and 90s as we head inland, and as well throughout much of the Central Valley. Just kind of shy of that 100-degree mark. By Wednesday, we'll see a few of those 100s throughout the Central Valley, but no widespread 100s expected even during the peak heat. We get warm during the middle of the week. We're back to that cooling forecast. By Saturday, the mountain conditions were only hitting highs near 60. We'll see 70s for the coming weekend in the foothills, that after reaching a high in the mid-90s on Wednesday. And again, breezy for the coast. We'll reach that peak heat on Wednesday, and then it gets quite a bit cooler as well as breezy through the middle and end of the week. Our 3-day forecast, we hit that peak heat with highs approaching 100, but just shy of it for the Sacramento region. And then as we head towards our end of the work week forecast, great time to spend some time outdoors. And for the first weekend of summer, unseasonably cool conditions before we warm up ever so slightly into next week.